Hello, Coursera-ers. Hope all is well. I am Adam reporting out of Chicago, Illinois, and I'm here to demonstrate the configuring of an EQ plugin to function like a large format mixing console EQ section. Essentially, I'm going to be using the same settings that Loudon provided in his video, but without further ado, here we go. As you can see on the screen here, I'm using Ableton Live 8, and I have the 8-band EQ plugin opened up where my mouse is going here. So essentially, to mirror a large format mixing board, we're going to be using 5 settings here with the EQ. First, we'll start off with the low cut, so essentially get rid of all those rumbly low frequencies that might not be attractive for the listener in a live environment. On the standard mixing board provided as an example, we have a low cut of 18 decibels per octave at 75 hertz. So we have EQ number 1 here. I will enable that. Secret, I might have already done some of this beforehand, but anyway, you can see we have number 1 EQ setting pulled up here. We are looking at a low cut as the filter type here. We have it set at 75 hertz, just like the mixing board. Gain right now I just have default at 0, and the Q slope of 0.69, so we have a nice low cut cutting off there. We can move this up or down if we want, but I don't really want to affect frequencies higher up in the spectrum, so we will leave it where it just starts dropping off at 75 hertz. We could also adjust the gain, but that's not going to do a whole lot for this particular equalization. Second, we were going to be looking at an analog low shelf, and that'll help us perhaps boost up some of the low end in our mix if we want to do so. So I'll click on number 2 here, and we have the low shelf EQ mode selected. In this particular case, on the example mixing board, we're looking at an 80 hertz frequency for that EQ to kick in, and a range of plus to minus 15 decibels of gain. So if I enable that, we're just going to leave gain at 0 at the moment, and a Q of 9.8 to match Loudon's, essentially his example provided in the video. If I move gain up or down, we can see the boost essentially takes place there. If I move it down, we get a little boosting up. Move it up here, we get a little boost in the low end that we would be cutting off, so that's not so attractive there. But essentially that will provide that low end boost should we want to utilize it in the mix. And if I lower the Q a little bit, now we have a little bit of a nicer boost there in the low end of the mix. So there you go for that. I will take the gain back to 0 just for example's sake. Moving right along, now we will tackle essentially the low mid areas of the mix, and we're looking there between approximately 100 hertz and 2K hertz. So that's where the frequency sweep is going to be. If I click here on the third EQ preset, we're going to use the bell, essentially filter mode for that, and I'm going to enable this preset here. Right now I have it set at 1.24 kilohertz, so somewhere in between 2K and 100. We can of course move that back and forth depending on our preference here, but I'll just leave it right in the middle. We can boost this up or down if we want a bell to boost mid frequencies or lower mid frequencies depending on how the mix turns out and the acoustics of the room. But essentially that is how you would add that, and that of course will be sweeping between 200 and about 2K. So we'll move this back up to 0 gain. Moving right along, now we're going to do the high mid. So essentially this is exactly the same idea as the low mid EQ we just did. A bell curve once again on the filter mode, and I will enable this. And for this particular range, we're looking between 400 hertz and 8K hertz. I have it preset at 4K, but essentially, we could click the number here and type in 80. We could type in 4,000. You can type in essentially whatever you want. But we're going to leave that right in the middle there, and once again it is sweeping between 400 and 8K. So I go back to 4K, we're looking at 1 on the Q scale here, the Q factor, and if I raise the gain up or down, we can choose essentially where we want that. That just depends on how the mix is working out, what instruments you have, once again the acoustics of the room. We'll boost this down to, or lower this down to 0 on the gain, and add in the final part of the spectrum, essentially the analog or the high shelf. So we are clicking down to 5 here. I have the high shelf filter mode selected on the EQ. I will enable that, and that is at a frequency of 12 kilohertz. Once again, just Q factor of 1 as the default. We can boost up the gain here if we want to, really bust some eardrums open for the audience, or we can lower it down if we want to give those guys in the audience a break. But essentially, this is what you would do for the top end of the mix if you want to have a nice, smooth tone there, depending on how bright you want to be, if you have trumpets or something along those lines. So essentially, that is how to configure a standard mixing board EQ. If you want to save this preset in Ableton, all you have to do is click the little disk icon here. You click Save, and you can see on the left window here, I can type in whatever I want the title of this lesson to be, title of EQ, mixing board EQ. And if you look closely, you can see I already might have saved an example here. But essentially, I press Enter. That EQ setup is saved, and we are all good to go. One final shout out. I want to give a shout out to the program Cam Studio. It is an open source screen recorder. It just uses my webcam microphone to record. It is absolutely 100% free and very handy if you want to make a recording. Very simple to use, extremely simple. You just press record, set the window size, and you are good to go. Hope you guys enjoyed the lesson here. If you have any questions, please give feedback in the feedback form, and I look forward to viewing your lessons as well. Thank you.